Today we're diving deep into the epic battle between Luffy and Kizaru and uncovering the mysteries of the ancient robot lurking behind them. Luffy's new form, Gear 5, has finally made its appearance, presenting a challenging battle against Kizaru, hasn't it? Meanwhile, the confrontation between Akainu and Kuma is unfolding simultaneously, and their relationship and objectives pose intriguing questions about how they will impact the story. And let's not lose sight of the activation of the ancient robot. How will this colossal entity cast ripples through the narrative? If you also find surprising theories or gain new insights, please share them in the comments. If we've missed any of your favorite scenes or points, we're waiting for your information. By the way, this topic is hotly debated in Japan. If you have information or perspectives we haven't encountered, we'd be thrilled to hear them. And of course, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Now, let's get right into it. In Chapter 1074, Bartholomew Kuma, a former Seven Warlord of the Sea, was seen climbing the Red Line with his bare hands, heading towards the Holy Land of Mary Joie. Why he is heading towards Mary Joie while escaping from the Revolutionary Army, even in an unconscious state, remains a mystery. However, while the guards of Mary Joie try to restrain him with chains, Kuma emits a shock wave, Ursa's shock, leveling the surroundings and scattering the guards. Then, appearing in one corner of Mary Joie is the former Fleet Admiral Akainu, aka Sakazuki. It might be the first time we've seen Akainu truly fight since the Paramount War, correct? If so, it's the first time in about 13 years, since around 2010 when the Paramount War was serialized, that we've seen a battle scene with Akainu. Certainly, Akainu's magma fruit, which felled Ace in one blow, is formidable. The magma punch Inugami, which gouged out Whitebeard's face, easily shaves about a third off Kuma's face. He also showers magma on Kuma from behind as he rushes somewhere, severing one leg. The power of the magma fruit, demonstrated here for the first time in a while since after the Paramount War. It has destructive power that's almost instantaneously fatal without means of defense, like strong haki. In fact, it was Akainu who left a large scar on Luffy's chest during the Paramount War, and the magma fruit is top class in terms of offensive power among the devil fruits in the story. While taking such fierce attacks from Akainu, Kuma disregards Akainu and vanishes from the spot with a teleportation ability. As Akainu, leading the Navy, has the duty to protect Mary Joie, I think he cannot let Kuma roam freely. Therefore, Akainu will likely continue to be on a mission to pursue Kuma. However, as personnel to chase the tyrant Kuma, a former warlord who is likely still in Mary Joie, Akainu or the Soldiers of God are about the only characters who fit the bill in terms of combat power. In addition, at a timing quite close to this, the Supreme Commander of the Soldiers of God, Saint Figalarand Garling, is executing Saint Don Quixote Miogard. So, it's highly likely that he is still on the land of Mary Joie, preparing to counter the Revolutionary Army. Thus, in the chase drama of Kuma, the Navy and the Soldiers of God, and also Akainu and Figalarand Garling may get involved. Also, while receiving such violent attacks from Akainu, Kuma does not use the paw fruit's ability against Akainu as he did against the guards, and he teleports, ignoring Akainu. Basically, it looks like Kuma, without a will, exercises his ability against opponents who become obstacles to moving forward. However, why didn't he try to repel Akainu with his ability? It kind of seems like Kuma's will still remains slightly in his body, connecting to mysterious actions. Although we got a glimpse of the heart-pounding showdown between Kuma and Akainu, why Kuma is pushing himself to this extent while unconscious has not yet been revealed. In other words, aren't you all wondering why he shook off the Revolutionary Army, climbed the Red Line, and came to Mary Joie? And considering Akainu thought of Bonney after seeing Kuma flee, it seems like Akainu is aware of most circumstances as to why Kuma underwent surgery to lose his personality. Speaking of Akainu and Bonney, we are reminded of this exchange when the Blackbeard pirates caught Bonney and the Navy apprehended her. "You gave me a chill when I heard you fled from the government, but it's all over now." Sakazuki. "You! I will never forgive you!" Bonney. The true intention behind the words Akainu spoke at this time, "You gave me a chill, and it's all over now," is not clearly revealed. But with the continuation of those words being clarified in this episode, some deduction has become slightly easier. No matter how much you bark, Kuma's self will never return. He volunteered and was reborn as a combat weapon. Sakazuki. According to Akainu, Kuma had undergone the modification surgery of his own volition. Up until now, it seemed like the mainstream prediction was that Kuma underwent the modification surgery reluctantly, perhaps because Bonney was taken hostage. However, Bonney, who continued to harbor murderous intent towards Vegapunk even after knowing about his relationship with Kuma, considerably softened her attitude, which is quite meaningful. And that is probably because Bonney knew the truth about Kuma in detail, because she saw a moment of Kuma's past where he was persecuted by the celestial dragons and experimented on and researched by the world government. She saw it through the memories stored in room NICU. And after seeing Kuma's memory, Bonney shed tears, and she had completely lost her murderous intent towards Vegapunk. Until that point, Bonney was adamantly distrusting what Vegapunk said and resented him for forcibly modifying Kuma. Given her character, it would make sense for her to sheathe her anger if she found out that Kuma was not forcibly modified but had other purposes. Currently, Kuma and Bonney are in very distant locations, Mary Joie and Egghead. But with Kuma's story involving the Revolutionary Army and the Navy currently progressing, the key person in this story is, of course, Kuma, who is involved, and also Vegapunk and the Straw Hat crew, who are trying to do something about Kuma. Moreover, Bonney, who is central to Kuma's story and involves Kizaru, is also naturally an important person. Therefore, a grand story that connects Kuma and Bonney revolving around Egghead and Mary Joie, the world government, and the Void Century, indeed seems to be emerging. This story has been moving quite a bit under the surface, and probably involving the Revolutionary Army. The true nature of Kuma and the reason for modifying his body will deeply affect the future developments. Where are you going? A puppet that has lost its will and heart. Sakazuki. And perhaps many were intrigued by this statement. Akainu's words, "Where are you going?" after Kuma fled, seemed to conceal some helpless emotions. Also, before Akainu's words, I was reminded of when Bonney emotionally confronted Akainu, stating that Kuma wouldn't voluntarily become a battle weapon. In this way, it appears that there is a deeper connection between Akainu, Bonney, and Kuma than what is visible. And speaking of Akainu, there were rumors at one point that there was some hidden relationship between him and Bonney. "You gave me a chill when I heard you fled from the government, but it's all over now." Sakazuki. "You! I will never forgive you." Bonney. "No matter how much you bark, Kuma's self will never return. He volunteered and was reborn as a combat weapon." Sakazuki. This exchange between Akainu and Bonney, whose continuation was clarified this time, tells us that Akainu and Bonney have known each other for quite some time. Also, from him saying, "You fled from the government," we know that Bonney had been staying in Mary Joie under the world government for a certain period. And speaking of Mary Joie, it is the place where Bonney touched Kuma's memory in Egghead, and a young Kuma seemed to have been experimented on there. In chapter 1074, Bonney was transported to a wide, grassy area when she touched Kuma's memory, and there was a child, presumably a young Kuma, crying while heavily wounded. Though Bonney couldn't approach him in his memory, adults are trying to take Kuma somewhere else with violence. "I don't want to go back! Not to that place again!" A young Kuma. "What's the use of crying?" "Then kill me here! I'm going to die anyway!" A young Kuma. A young Kuma refused to go back somewhere with these words, and adults swung together like a bat at Kuma. "I'm sorry," cried Kuma, surrounded and continually beaten by 5 to 6 adults. What a cruel depiction! And during this depiction, a building presumed to be Pangaea Castle and a silhouette with characteristic celestial dragon-like hairstyle were drawn. From this, it seems that this abuse took place in Mary Joie and was further led by the celestial dragons. Combining Kuma's memory with Akainu's flashback and the exchange between Akainu and Bonney, Kuma and Bonney seem to have been captured by the world government. Or they were confined as test subjects, during which they became acquainted with Akainu of the Navy. Therefore, even Akainu, who advocates absolute justice, might have some thoughts about Kuma and Bonney, who have become the world government's experimental subjects. Such a humane side of Akainu seems to be depicted. And with the suggested relationship with Akainu by Kuma and Bonney, I speculate that Akainu's character will be explored deeper. "Kizaru! We're 100 times stronger than we were 2 years ago!" Monkey D. Luffy. In chapter 1091, the confrontation between Luffy and Kizaru, which began with Luffy launching a preemptive strike with these words and marking their first battle in 2 years, kicks off. Firstly, Luffy activates Gear 4, not turning into Bound Man, but Snake Man, much like in his fight against Seraphim. Given that Snake Man emphasizes speed, this likely considers Kizaru, who can move at the speed of light. However, Kizaru easily deflects the versatile attacks of Gear 4 Snake Man. After distancing himself from the attack, he charges at light speed, kicks Luffy away, and simultaneously destroys Vega Force 1. From this combat depiction, it's fair to say that Kizaru's ability is at least above Luffy's in his Gear 4 state. Furthermore, the current Kizaru fighting Luffy hasn't used any distinct major moves, seemingly just testing the waters. During the battle in Wano Country, Kaido typically endured all of the opponent's attacks with a combat style. When he activated Future Vision of Observation Haki in Master Thief, like Kizaru, he easily dodged the versatile attacks of Gear 4 Snakeman. Meaning, Snake Man doesn't work against Observation Haki or Super Speed. Essentially, even though Snake Man in Gear 4 should arguably be the strongest, Gear 4 is not very effective against those with strong Haki. This seems to be the combat balance. If Gear 4 doesn't work against Kizaru, then in the battles against the remaining 3 admirals, Shanks, Mihawk, as well as top power players of the Blackbeard Pirates, and in the fight against the world government, battling with Gear 5 becomes a prerequisite. Luffy, who was casually kicked away, crashes into Vega Force 1, unable to withstand the damage, and the aircraft explodes. Bonney and Frankie, barely escaping the explosion, find Kizaru approaching them. "You've grown quite a bit, huh, Bonney? Kids these days grow up fast." Borsalino. From Kizaru's words, it's revealed that Bonney met him when she was a child. "So, have you been here before?" Luffy: when I was a child, it was still a normal laboratory then. Jewelry Bonney: as spoken in chapter 1062, the timing when Bonney came to Egghead as a child, and as depicted in Sentomaru's flashback in chapter 1091, coincides with the period when Kizaru was cooperating with Vegapunk's research. Thus, although not 100% certain, I think Vegapunk, Kizaru, Sentomaru, Kuma, and Bonney have known each other for a long time. Don't hurt my acquaintances outside of duty. Borsalino: like the very close Vegapunk and Sentomaru, Kizaru doesn't want to hurt Bonney, whom he has known for a long time, as much as possible. Given that Kizaru self-mockingly refers to himself as a corporate slave, it feels like his past at Egghead, along with deeper emotions within Kizaru, will gradually be revealed. Against Kizaru, Bonney, who stands as an opposing pirate, attacks to prevent Vegapunk's assassination, but is easily dodged. Like Luffy, she is kicked all the way to the Frontier Dome's barrier and burnt by lasers. Bonnie's ability allows her to create herself in the past or future as she wishes. Therefore, if she can transform into a body with high durability, she wouldn't die from the explosion upon hitting this barrier. However, since even Luffy, who transformed into Gear 5, took considerable damage, Bonney wouldn't be completely unscathed. Strategically, Jewelry Bonney gives the impression of being easily defeated by Kizaru without putting up much of a fight. However, aside from her contribution in combat, for some reason, Bonney appeared in the flashback of Akainu in the first half of this occasion, Mary Joie. Furthermore, in the second half, she shows an exchange that allows for predicting a relationship with Kizaru. In the end, Bonney was just dismissed by Kizaru. However, attention is drawn to the fact that Bonney has been so focused on up to this point. This may be the prelude to Bonney being treated as a central figure in the story, involving not the combat side, but the narrative aspect involving both Akainu and Kizaru. Finally, the trio of Vegapunks successfully deactivated the Frontier Dome barrier that had been hindering the escape from Egghead. However, Kizaru, who repelled Luffy and Bonney, arrives inside the lab, ignoring Frankie. Understand, this mission is tough for me too. I don't want it to drag on. Kizaru: whether he tried to kill or secure Vegapunk as he stood before him, attempting to carry out the mission. At that moment, Luffy, who had been blown to the barrier and exploded, returns, enlarged by Gear 5, and by grabbing Kizaru with that gigantic hand, somehow the worst-case scenario is averted. The flow, after coming back with Gear 5, grabbing the opponent with a gigantic hand, is quite similar to when Luffy's power awakened during the battle with Kaido. Luffy, awakened in Gear 5, had hoisted Kaido up to the rooftop of Onigashima while gripping him with a gigantic hand. So, the flow from here on might turn into Luffy dragging Kizaru out of the lab and initiating the second round of Luffy versus Kizaru. And unlike before, with the barrier that restricted Luffy's movements gone, he can fight to his heart's content. But if you look at the frame where Luffy is climbing to the top of the tower on the last page, it can be seen. Right above the research layer where Luffy and the others are now is Punkrecores, the storage for Vegapunk's brain, which is quite a hindrance in a battle. Therefore, not only pulling him out of the lab, but there is also the possibility of pulling Kizaru down to the factory layer below the clouds. Moreover, Kizaru, gripped by Luffy, is sweating coldly, so, unlike earlier where he fought with a relaxed expression, he now recognizes Luffy as a formidable enemy. Up to this point, Kizaru, depicted in the battle scenes, seemed to fight a little laxly, with his expression unstrained. However, from now on we might finally see battle scenes where Kizaru is serious. And, as we speculated in the video of chapter 1091, Kizaru's seriousness could be his awakened ability. Because after the Summit War 2 years ago, the weather of Punk Hazard, where Akainu and Aokiji had a duel, is still altered. Normally, Logia Devil Fruits temporarily affect the weather. Nevertheless, the weather of Punk Hazard continues to be affected by the Magma Fruit and Ice Fruit. If that's the case, this could be the effect of an awakened Logia Devil Fruit. So, Akainu and Aokiji have awakened their abilities, and considering Kizaru is on a par with these two, there's a possibility that the Glint Fruit is awakened. And, as seen from the battle with Kaido, the power difference between Gear 5 and Gear 4 is overwhelming. Therefore, if the Glint Fruit is awakened, Kizaru, recognizing Luffy as a formidable enemy, will use his awakened ability. Furthermore, with the barrier gone, the Navy, having defeated all the sea beast weapons, will start landing on Egghead one after another and climb up to the research layer where Luffy and the others are. The naval forces consist of 30,000 Marines, 10 Vice Admirals, and a massive power like the Pacifista Mk3rd. And in case of a head-on collision, the chances of victory for the Straw Hat crew are almost zero. Thus, Luffy must defeat Kizaru as quickly as possible and escape from Egghead immediately. Unlike the Wano Country raid, where winning the one-on-one battle with Kaido was directly related to the victory conditions for Momonosuke and the others, adding time limits and escorting Vegapunk imposes quite harsh conditions on Luffy, turning it into a battle that can be said to have become quite a difficult fight. And with Luffy turning into Gear 5, the drum of liberation resounds throughout Egghead. Due to this drum of liberation, ancient robots, which should have been immobile due to a lack of energy and left in Egghead, are activated. This is the Iron Giant of legend, which attacked the Holy Land Mary Joie about 200 years ago. Moreover, it was created 900 years ago. Stella. According to Dr. Vegapunk's explanation in chapter 1067, this robot was made 900 years ago. Given the technology used, which even the genius Vegapunk cannot replicate, it's highly likely it was created by a certain kingdom that fought against 20 united countries during the Void Century. Now, this robot being awakened by the Drum of Liberation, it can be inferred that there is a deep connection between a certain kingdom and the sun god Nika. This robot is said to have attacked Mary Joie 200 years ago, but now that fruit is also a legend to us, for hundreds of years it did not awaken. The Five Elders. According to the words of the Five Elders in chapter 1037, the human fruit, mythical type model, Nika has not awakened for several hundred years. I hear the drum of liberation, which I have not heard for 800 years. Zunesha. Moreover, Zunesha in chapter 1043 says it hears the drum of liberation for the first time in 800 years. Therefore, the possibility that there was an awakener of the human fruit mythical type model, Nika, 200 years ago is almost zero. So there is a possibility that the robot itself, albeit unconsciously, attacked Mary Joie with a purpose like Kuma. However, now it is suggested that Nika may be involved in the activation of the ancient robot. So, the activation 200 years ago might also have been caused by something related to Nika or a certain kingdom. Also, although the Vega Force 1, which was essential for escaping from Egghead and was broken when Luffy was kicked into it by Kizaru, Vega Force 1 is something I tried to make based on this. However, there are parts that even my scientific power cannot replicate. It is very unbelievable that it is a mechanical soldier made 900 years ago. Shaka. According to the words of Shaka in chapter 1067, Vega Force 1 was made based on the model of the ancient robot. Therefore, there is a good chance that this robot will transport the Sunny instead of Vega Force 1, and the escape plan is still viable. Such an ancient robot is located in the factory layer, where the Navy, which is thought to be landing one after another, is. It is unclear why the ancient robot was activated in response to the Drum of Liberation, and whether it will attack or ignore the Marines. However, if it goes on a rampage as it did when it attacked Mary Joie 200 years ago, since the Navy is distracted by the ancient robot, it is unlikely that they will come to the research layer where Vegapunk is immediately. In other words, the activation of the ancient robot has extended the grace period until escape. Furthermore, the conclusion of the Egghead incident is said to shock the world. Probably, it is something related to Saint Saturn, the Blackbeard pirates, and the life and death of Luffy. However, there may now be a possibility that the actions of the robot, created during the Void Century and activated in Chapter 1092, led to a major incident. In such a manner, we've speculated. But what do you all think? That's all for today. This channel posts summaries, explanations, and ranking videos related to One Piece. If you like One Piece, we would be happy if you could support us by subscribing to our channel and commenting. Thank you for watching till the end. See you in the next video.